and day 2,177 days since Richard was forcibly removed from his barracks room there on Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas, because he was a whistleblower. He was being retaliated against by infiltrated cartel and the Mormon mafia. And I really want to distinguish those, um, even though they are in alliance with each other, but it is the Mormon mafia working together with the cartel. And the cartel, they're very tied to the Juarez Cartel. That's why this designation that happened this past week was so important, designating the Juarez Cartel as a foreign terroristic organization, with special designations of global terroristic organization, and they were infiltrated into the American system, and of course on our military base and in our military. And Richard was forcibly removed by this group, who happened to be his chain of command. The prime suspect, of course, is his platoon leader, Dallas Hart, and taken down to the basement room because he was platoon leader. He had access to the arms room. The arms room is a restricted area, but it's soundproof, and that is where the crime scene um, is. And his life was taken, Richard's life was taken there, and then his body was then stolen off of Fort Bliss, even with 10,000 cameras or more. But DES Thomas Kane, the director of emergency services, confirmed that Richard's body left Fort Bliss, and was stolen off of Fort Bliss and trafficked to Juarez, Mexico. So that is huge news, um, to say that every night. It needs to be said until we get accountability, until we get Richard's remains repatriated back to us, his family. So we have in the line of duty designation, we have the Gold Star designation. We have all the evidence that he was killed uh, before the whistleblowing on Fort Bliss. And we have evidence that indicates that his remains were disposed of at the Plenitude Crematorium on the uh, Juarez, Mexico side of the border, because this crematorium is tied to Group of Purchase, which is a transnational cross-border funeral home operation that gets contracts from Fort Bliss and from the city officials there in El Paso. So we have breaking news tonight. Let me make sure that I'm on and everybody can hear me. Okay. Thank you so much, Laura, for coming on. I see you now. Um, so we have breaking news. There's just, every day is breaking news, but you can tell that there has been a lot of complaints filed, a lot of evidence filed, documented and filed, a lot of uh, puzzle pieces put together in documents with evidence, with witness testimony, with screenshots, with everything, and then they're filed with the appropriate agency. And you can tell that there's a lot going on behind the scenes because we have this breaking news after, and I'll even put up the display on it. After 50 years Uh, 50 years. Osvaldo Rodríguez Borunda, who's tied to Sylvia Borunda Firth, and I hate to go down the uh, another avenue. We have to keep focus on what just happened, and it's so hard for us because everything is so tied together. But Osvaldo Rodriguez Borunda, um, the first time in 50 years, he has posted a retraction, and it is in reference to, in regards to Javier Corral, who is the former governor of Chihuahua, that was absolutely turned on. He was, and that's what they do. If you don't like their criminal activity, they turn on you. And so I want to tell you that our evidence confirms that Osvaldo Rodriguez Borunda is a Juarez Cartel operative. Okay, that's very important for everyone to know that this is how he got his rise. He started with alcohol, right? With providing spirits, right? And then he grew um, this huge cross-border media. He's a media giant on both sides. He provides news on both sides of the border, and um, and he is absolutely tied to the Juarez cartel. I think that's very important for everyone to know in regards and in the timeline of this retraction, because as you see, the first time in 50 years since he's had his publication, which uh he has English version, he has El Paso version, Juarez version, um so on all platforms, when it says he has published this retraction on all the platforms, that's what it means. um because they went after the governor of Chihuahua, Javier Corral, with lies for 7 years, y'all. For 7 years. Does that remind you of somebody? That reminds me of our son Richard, who the media has put out lies upon lies upon lies, and we're waiting for a retraction, right? We're waiting for uh, but this is because a lawsuit is going on. And then, of course, the Juarez cartel, the very cartel that he is tied to, has now been designated an FTO. So a terroristic organization. So legally, he really has lost his protection and must, after 50 years, 7 years of attacking Javier Corral, he has to print a retraction. And this is so important on so many legal, uh, what this means legally to our son's case and the stories. It just tells you that there is a lot going on behind the scenes, a lot that is being uh, investigated and discovered and documented and then edited, with sources. I shouldn't say edit in a way of retraction or redaction, but adding more information to what has been discovered and then filed absolutely with exhibits, right? With lots of exhibits, um, meaning backup, corroborating evidence um, to everything that we have found. So, we can find the truth, but then when it's corroborated over and over and over again, it creates a pattern. And this pattern absolutely has identified the cartels, because the cartels operate in patterns. You can tell where they're at because they leave their tire track, so to speak, right? They leave their fingerprints, so to speak. They leave a pattern. And so this is why documenting establishes a trail that shows their pattern. And that absolutely strengthens our assertions and our son's case. And because this is the very, very, this is a negotiation for Richard's repatriation of his remains. So it can be pretty volatile. And and we keep going. We keep going to document this. So this is huge news. And why does it have other ramifications? Because Osvaldo Borunda was like the go-to for other media to use his platform. Uh, and so the other media has, uh, we've put it out there, the El Paso Matters and FitFem El Paso and um, the City Magazine um, and several others that have reported falsely about Richard that was then, piggybacked onto Al Diario. You know, so that time is really, I think it's over. I think that's over because of this Juarez Cartel designation. When they're publishing lies, I mean, you can see it's a big deal. After 50 years, finally, he admits that he was lying for 7 years. For 7 years, so it means that you don't give up. You don't give up, and we want to congratulate Javier Corral for not giving up, and we're not giving up. We want a retraction about our son, right? We want a retraction about, and not only that, but them to allow us, because I believe there's Mexican rules and laws that say that the media has to allow us to have a statement when they're writing about our son, um, to get out the truth. And that was never afforded to us. We, oh gosh, was it 15, 17 times we asked to make a statement, um, clarifying, and also issued a cease and desist, and also asked them to remove Richard's picture that they're using illegally. Um, you know, it, and they just told, because of the cartel protection, the terroristic organizations protection, the Mormon mafia protection. They were, able to just ignore us and not get our statement um, on both sides of the border. And so, this is a really, really good day again. And I knew that as soon as I saw that Juarez Cartel was designated an FTO, I knew that this was very good for us and that we would see this kind of activity. Because now, when they're putting up false information and paying Google to keep it at the very top, we've put out thousands of posts, really thousands of posts. We're at 2,177 today, just on the live streams. Um, so, we've put up so much material, and yet, um, I think El Paso Matters is paying a lot of money through El Paso um, Community Foundation, which is really I think it was Martin Paredes, and I meant to go look that up, so I need to write a note here, because I really do believe that um, his article made a really good point and allegation against El Paso Community Foundation as a money laundering organization. Um, because where does all that watchical and all the trafficking money go? Does it go through West Star Bank? Does it go through the El Paso Community Foundation? Is that why? Because Sylvia Borunda Firth, who is tied to Osvaldo um, Borunda Rodriguez, right, or Rodriguez Borunda, they're tied. They're very tied. They're Juarez Cartel, and she sits on the El Paso Community Foundation board of directors. And of course, uh, she has her fingers in everything and sits on everything. But the 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 main thing right now is the El Paso Community Foundation board, um, and and she's tied to the Juarez cartel. So this means that they're aiding and abetting, right? Um, there's just going to be a lot happening because of this designation. It's brilliant because if they're aiding and abetting, if they're helping them, um, then their assets could all be frozen. So this means that, if Martin Paredes is right about El Paso Community Foundation being a money laundering organization, and I hope I got that right, but I think I am. Um, then all of that money that was ill-gotten, all those ill-gotten gains can be frozen. And then, of course, because of all the crime that they have committed against humanity, against the people of Chihuahua, Mexico, and of the United States, then they can use that money to pay restitution, right? Because just think of all the deficit, all of the fraud that they have robbed the people of their wealth, of their pursuit for success and justice and happiness and everything. So there definitely needs to be some restitution, right? Um, and anyway, so I see what President Trump is doing. He's cutting off the spigots. He is creating the legal avenue to freeze their assets of ill-gotten gains. So that means that if they're doing huachicol fiscal, which is the fuel, the sophisticated tax evading fuel theft, then he can freeze their assets, and then they can't do it, right? They can't do it. It's not worth doing. They can't access the funds. So, in freezing assets and the funds, he's really turning off the trafficking and the fuel theft um, enterprises, operations, cartel operations that's going on, and and um, in doing that, he's creating uh, other economies, legitimate economies, right? Because all of that money, people have grown accustomed to depending on ill-gotten gains, right? That kind of economy. And so, like today, or well, we're past midnight now, but Spain won FIFA, right? That brought in and will bring in a lot of money for Spain. Um, a lot of money, uh, and it brought in a lot of money to Mexico. I think they hosted 13 games, Canada 13 games, and then the United States the rest. And it was a huge success, and I think the media is going to try to put a damper on it because of course, it was organized by President Trump. But it created so many jobs. I think it was like over 100,000 jobs in Mexico alone that those 13 FIFA games created. So, that's a legitimate uh, economy instead of fentanyl or stealing fuel or trafficking children and things like that. So, um, there has to be an active, vibrant, true economy to take the place of um, of the criminal trafficking and fuel theft economy that's been going on for so long. And, talking about Spain, I know, I really love economics. I try to keep up with it. And I know that, you know, since Spain won the FIFA um, World Cup, they're going to do well. And they really, it's Spanish banks that have practically colonized Mex of the financial aspect of Mexico. I think it's Spanish banks that control like almost 60% of the banking. Um, Maybe it's like 50, but 60% of the mortgage loans, credit cards. But it is really a huge, huge market in Mexico for Spain. It's the Spanish and if you're from Mexico, you can even tell me this, Santander, and then uh, what is that other? I think I wrote a note down about these banks in Mexico. Yeah, BBVA and Santander Bank. They're huge in Mexico. So this is them winning. And if you're any bank in Mexico, you were probably somehow connected to the trafficking proceeds, right? Because Mexico was just being used as like a trafficking hub and fuel theft and everything. And so now, um, you know, and then Spain depended on that kind of money. So it's a really good thing that they won the FIFA, and it's a good thing that Mexico did so well hosting the FIFA World Cup, and that, of course, uh, President Scheinbaum made this big deal with Europe now for a trade deal. So, yeah, there needs to be a legitimate replacement, legitimate economy, um, building and whatnot. Ask President Trump. He's like the pro at creating a legitimate economy and replacing the trafficking and the fuel theft. So, and that, of course, when all the I mean, a huge portion, I think it's close to 60% that the Spanish banks run in Mexico of the financial system there. So it's a big, big relationship between Spain and Mexico. Um, and that is really important to understand how things are interconnected. Um, and of course, uh, so Richard's case and Richard's murder and cover up and um, what he was exposing, uh, really, it tells you how huge and what the domino effect. I think that's a good visual the domino effect of his reports and what it triggered, the audits it triggered, and who it exposed, what that meant. And so that's why there was such resistance in getting to the truth about our son. Um, so Laura says they're at the hospitals as well. Oh, the cartel members, they lease cars with the bank. Yeah. Um, and we know that they were doing timeshares, of course, casinos. Um, yes, and they're very big at the hospitals because they were doing organ harvesting, right? They were doing organ harvesting. And we know that because of all the lies that surround the whole 2020 and 2021 health episode that happened. A lot of lies there, y'all. A lot of lies. Um, and scaring people, and when you scare people you damage their health, right? And I know that because all we like sheep, and I lived in the middle of Ireland and Longford, Ireland, and where my neighbors were the sheep in the field. Um, and when the dogs came, the dogs would just have to scare the lambs and the sheep, and some of them would have heart attacks and die just from fear. And that's what I'm saying. Our human bodies, when we're under great stress and fear and everything, it's not good for our health. So these people, they profit off of us being sick and scared and unhealthy. And um, yeah, they're up to no good. They're up to no good. And so I just, I give you the opinion, or just a tip. You can take it or leave it. Stay in the Word of God all the time. Do not fear, right? For I'm with you always. With God, then who can be against you if God is with you? Just stay in the Word of God all the time. Put on your full armor of God, he says. Um, Come close to God and he will come close to you. Seek and ye shall find. Uh, so he gives you the hope, he gives you the answers, he gives you the courage. Um, and, he'll lead you into the wilderness, right? And you won't have any food or drink. You won't have any food or drink in the wilderness on your own, right? You can't have human food, human drink. No, he leads you into the wilderness so that you will depend on him, and then he'll feed you, right? He'll feed you. He'll provide you with the manna. He'll provide you with the meat. Um, and what I'm talking about is spiritual, and also uh, with knowledge and a way forward and strength and courage and anything that you need. But it's not always easy because you have to go into the wilderness, right? Um, and this, of course, our son's case has been just that. Um, you just feel, uh, wow, all things are not what you thought they were. Nope, it is much different in reality. You get a big dose of the wilderness, a big dose of the reality, and then you have to depend on God for everything. And so, and that's what you want, because that's when your fear melts away. That's where, you get all this extra knowledge that you didn't even know you were capable of having. So it is, that's our tip. That's our tip going through all of this, because look at what we've accomplished, and we are at right now the vicious negotiations for the repatriation of our son's remains. We have everything else. We have everything else. We want our son's remains, and the accountability will follow that. The accountability is on its way. The reckoning is here. The reckoning is here. The accountability is here. And you saw it today with um, Osvaldo um, Borunda, of Al Diario. You saw it. After 50 years, he had to post a retraction. That's because of um, uh, legal measures going on behind the scenes, pressure behind the scenes, FTO designations behind the scenes. And he'll try to make it as rosy as he can, because he, wants to keep people in the dark. But he was lying for 7 years about Javier Corral. And Javier Corral is not just nobody, right? He's a mover and a shaker. And so what Aldiario did to Javier Corral hurt so many others. The ramifications hurt so many others because Javier Corral is a mover and a shaker. So, yes, thank you so much, Selena. Amen. Thank you so much. So that is really huge news. And let me make sure that oh yeah, I talked about I did I was so happy to see President Scheinbaum and Prime Minister Carney with President Trump there at the FIFA, because the FIFA World Cup was um, exactly all three countries hosting it. So it was very right for them to be there. But as you know, President Trump is, he has a lot of things going on at one time. And so I very, very confident that he was talking about Richard's case. Okay. Very confident, because of all the information that we have gotten lately. So he absolutely would take this opportunity face to face at FIFA, um, to or behind the scenes at FIFA, or the trip, to discuss Richard's case. And I was asked, what does Canada have to do with it? Canada has a lot to do with it. Um, and just an example of what Canada has to do with this is that the phones, remember there were uh, burner phones that were harassing us for months. I mean, vile, vulgar threats, intimidation. You just wouldn't even believe it. All times of the day, it was bad. And you couldn't just turn it off because it was um, our Find Richard Halliday phone number. And so then we'd have to start all over with our advertisement of that number. Um, but they were using burner phones to do this to us, and we traced those numbers. Okay, we traced those numbers, and one of those numbers traced to Toronto, to the city hall there in Toronto. And we'll never forget that. Um, and we know that this absolutely involves not only the United States and Mexico, but also Canada. So yeah, this case and it's all about this fuel theft, billions of dollars, and then billions in fentanyl trafficking, and then the organ harvesting, and the weapons smuggling, and uh, truckloads, and then of course 500,000 children were trafficked through Fort Bliss. Okay, they have found 150,000 of those. So that's it just goes on from there. Um, uh, the level of uh, restructuring that we have to do because of the crime that was allowed to grow under, um, yeah, I'll just keep it there on that one. So, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for coming on. And we just ask one thing for you to share. Share this information everywhere. including on Find Richard Halliday. I saw that Laura was reposting underneath different posts. I think that's so great. All the different memes and everything. That lets people know that we have been doing our homework, that we have been investigating, and we have the receipts, and that we are not just making things up, that we are absolutely telling the truth about what is going on in El Paso, on Fort Bliss, in Chihuahua, Mexico, and in our son's case. So we really, really appreciate that. So thank you so much. And please keep sharing, share everywhere. And please, if you haven't signed the petition yet to have a review of Richard's file, please sign that petition because that has other effects to the case. And get some friends to sign it too for a full review um, you know, uh, for a Purple Heart medal, right? That would be amazing, absolutely amazing, legally to get that because the records show it. The records are there. They just need to be reviewed. And so, yeah, that would be a very, very big help going forward, especially with the all the other things that we're doing right now. So, thank you so much. God bless you, and I will be back tomorrow, God willing.